So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this month's Discover Tennessee History webinar. We're really excited to have you join us for this month's presentation from the Tennessee State Library and Archives. So a couple of quick things, just housekeeping things as we get ready to jump into this month's content. As always, for those of you who are joining us live today, please be sure to keep your mics muted just so we have a nice clean audio for recording purposes. And also make sure that we're seeing your first and last name in the chat box. One of the benefits, of course, to being able to join live is that we do hope to make these sessions interactive. So feel free to open up the chat box, introduce yourselves, feel free to ask questions, make comments throughout the session. I know TSLA has several staff members who are going to be helping to monitor that and responding to folks in the chat. So again, be sure that you are making use of that chat box. Also, we do have an ongoing Padlet for the Discover Tennessee History webinar series. You can find that at this link right here or by using this QR code. And this will be updated with resources from today's session after today. So again, be sure to note that, and we'll share this link again at the end of the session. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Lindsay to kick us off. Or I say I'm turning over to Lindsay. So.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining our Tennessee State Library and Archives for the Discover Tennessee History webinar. Today, I have with me Kelly Wilkerson, who will be helping present today. And we are looking forward to sharing with you about our Tennessee Constitution. So give me a second while I'll share my screen. All right, can we see my screen? Okay. All right, so like I said, this is the webinar about Tennessee's Constitution, continuity and change, and we are the Tennessee State Library and Archives. So today we're going to be talking about 3 different versions of our Tennessee's constitutions and how it has changed and what has remained the same, because we do have a lot of fundamentals within our constitution that will stay the same throughout the state's history, but there are some big changes that have come as history and our nation has changed as well as our state. So first, we're going to introduce you to our Constitution and why do states need a Constitution will come next. We will talk about a timeline of when the versions were made, and then we will go into some resources that we have for our Tennessee Constitution, which we will be making available after this webinar. And then we'll provide you some resources that the Tennessee State Library and Archives has available to all teachers and educators across the state. So why do states need a constitution? A constitution is a basic plan of government that helps people live together peacefully. The United States Constitution has established federal laws that determine the powers of the government. When our founding fathers wrote the Bill of Rights, they added the 10th Amendment, which creates a separation between the powers of the federal government and those that are attributed to the governments of the individual states. And this was something that our founding fathers found very important as they were writing their Bill of Rights, because they did not want a very powerful federal government, because as you know, we did not want somebody who was a king or a queen or a more centralized government. We wanted to have a little bit more say within our states. So why is the purpose, or what is the purpose of the state's constitution? Having a constitution for each state and all states have their own constitution, allows the states to protect its own citizens. Each state has diverse and unique culture and needs for their citizens. So it's important for states' governments to have their own constitution to address the unique culture and diversity within each state. And then it provides checks and balances for the federal government, so it does not become too powerful or centralized within the federal government. And as you can see on the side, we are going to talk about where these constitutions are held. There is a display of replicas here, and we do see some people looking at these replicas during Statehood Day. So the timeline of the three versions of our Tennessee Constitution. First, the first Constitution was written in 1796, and George Washington was finishing up his second term as the president. During 1796, Tennessee leaders wrote the first version of the Constitution to form the state of Tennessee. The second Tennessee Constitution was written in 1834, and it was written after Andrew Jackson had become the president. In this version, we have some positive changes that came about and some negative, which we will talk about a little bit later when we go in more depth of each constitution. These changes within the Constitution wanted to address the common man. And then finally, we have the 1870 version, which was our third Constitution and what we operate under today. And this Constitution was written in 1870. The Civil War was over, and we were in the heart of Reconstruction. Ulysses S. Grant was our president during this time. And we revised it so it would fit under various Reconstruction acts. So where is the Constitution housed? Well, it is housed at the Tennessee State Library and Archives, which if you've never visited our building, it is located in the Bicentennial Mall. We are right across the mall from the Tennessee State Museum. All three versions are located here. They are kept in a vault and are once a year removed on Statehood Day for public viewing. And Statehood Day is on June 1st. And here's a picture again of the Tennessee Constitutions. These are replicas that the public can come and see. It's one of our permanent displays that we have. And you can see what these life-size versions would look like and gather some information. We are open to the public on Monday through Saturday from 8 to 4:30. The lobby is, that is. And you can come look at some of our displays, some of our electronic displays and interactive displays during these times that we are open. And with that being said, I am going to turn this over to Kelly Wilkerson, who is going to be presenting a little bit more about these constitutions for you.
All right. Hi, friends. Before we get started talking more in depth about each version of our state constitution, as Lindsay, talked about, that there were 3 drafts that have been written. We currently still operate under the 1870 version of the Constitution, but I wanted to ask a couple of questions. And if you guys would answer these questions in the chat. How many of you have, if you've been to the Library and Archives and visited our state constitutions, either just on a regular day or on Statehood Day, would you let us know that in the chat? And then I would also like to hear from teachers which specific constitution you're teaching. I know that there are some versions that are specific to 5th grade, some that are in 8th grade, and then of course I think it's just 1870 that's taught at the high school American history course. So if we could start to see some answers in our chat, that would be great. All right, I see 1796 and 1834. Perfect. All right, 5th grade, 8th grade, great. This also gives us an idea of what grade levels we have here today. Okay, I see someone originally from Kentucky. That's perfect. All right, and Maureen, looks like you've got all 3 to teach. That is great. Suzanne, you as well. Okay, Lindsay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll dive in. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how we get to the point of actually writing a constitution. And for the interest of time, I'm going to tell you that we're going to skip over a good bit of history. You know, all of you who are teaching Tennessee history know about the Watauga Association, the Cumberland Compact, the state of Franklin. Those are all very important things to the creation of a state government here in Tennessee, but we're not going to spend a lot of time or any time really on those. Just in the interest of time of kind of jumping ahead and getting started to talk about the process that is happening in the late 1780s, early 1790s. So we'll start with 1789. North Carolina ratifies the United States Constitution and cedes their western lands to the new national government. So the national government at that time decides to create the Southwest Territory. And that's essentially the entire state of Tennessee, part of Kentucky, but the entire state of Tennessee makes up that Southwest Territory. And so once that happens, of course, settlement really starts to expand. William Blount is who is identified and chosen as governor for the Southwest Territory, and he very quickly begins the process of moving towards statehood according to the requirements laid out by the Northwest Ordinance. There are a couple of steps that they had to take. First was a census that was taken in 1795. At that time, there were 60,000. A state was required to have 60,000 people living in the state in order to become a state. That was a requirement of the Northwest Ordinance. Of course, here in Tennessee, when they took that census, they identified 77,262 residents. The next step that needed to be taken is that the citizens would vote on whether to proceed with statehood. And of course, they did vote to do so, which led the governor to call for a constitutional convention. At the bottom of all these slides, you all will see that we've got the curriculum standards that we work with and that you all work with. So for the items that we're going to show you today in this presentation, we have really tried to stick to the material that is in these curriculum standards because we know that's what you all have to teach. There on the right, you all see a historic document that's written in cursive. I hope there's still kids who can read some cursive, but this is actually a document that was the legislative act to prepare for the enumeration. So for the census that was taken in 1795. And in that document, it does identify exactly who they were looking to count. So if you guys have questions about that, certainly let us know. Lindsay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so moving on, once Governor Blount decided to call a constitutional convention, they held that in January of 1796 and of course held it in Knoxville. Pulled together 55 delegates, 5 from each county, would meet to take 3 weeks to write the Constitution. Over the course of the Constitutional Convention, Knoxville was established as the first capital, and the name Tennessee was chosen for the state at that time. Through the course of the Constitutional Convention and within the bounds of the 1796 Constitution, they established a state legislature, a court system, and identified that Tennessee will have a governor and what that role of governor would look like. Now, one of the things to note, and I'm sure if you all are teaching the Constitution, you all have noted this, In 1796, when they wrote this Constitution, they allowed for all free men, 21 and older, who owned property, the right to vote. So again, free men. So this means anybody who was, the formerly enslaved who had since been free, they could vote as long as they owned property and were a man and over the age of 21. Any questions about that 1796 version of the Constitution? We'll see those in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. All right, Lindsay, let's move on to talk about 1834. Oh, 2 slides, I forgot. We've got an image break in here. We tried to put a couple of those in. Thought you all just might be interested to see that we've got there on the left a picture of Tennessee's first state capitol in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's the building that they initially met in. And then, of course, over here on the right, we've got an image of Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where, of course, the United States Constitution was written. All right, next slide. All right, let's go on. Is that Blount Mansion on the left? No, I don't think so. I think that is a separate separate facility, but a good question, Maureen. All right. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the 1834 Constitution. So you all know that Andrew Jackson is elected in 1828 and takes office, of course, in 1829. And Jackson's election and presidency popularized the ideals of the common man, the people's president. Everyone was excited to have Jackson being the first president elected that didn't represent the states of what I think Massachusetts and Delaware. So he comes from, a different background than all the former presidents. And so things were certainly changing in America at this time. There were lots of calls in response to this idea of elevating the common man. There were lots of calls to revise the state constitutions, not just here in Tennessee, but in other states as well. There's several attempts over the course of the years between 1829 and 1834 for Tennessee to pull together a constitutional convention. And it's not until 1834 that they are able to do so. So they start, to have this convention in 1834 and, start to rework the 1796 version of the state constitution. And one of the things that they do in response to this idea of elevating the common man is removing the property owning requirement in order for citizens to vote. So in order for Tennesseans, for citizens to vote, they no longer had to own property. It also allowed citizens to vote for sheriffs, trustees, and other county officials. Prior to that, those positions were appointed. So now they're able to vote for those. Now, while the 1796 Constitution did allow free men, regardless of race, to vote, this Constitution does change that. So the 1834 Constitution has the stipulation that only white men could vote. Again, it's still men. It's now only white men who can vote, but they have removed the property owning requirement. All right, next slide. And again, an image break here. One of the things is our staff, and quite a few folks are on our call today, but as our staff were working on this topic and putting this together and the curriculum items that we've got to share with you all today, one of the questions that came up for us is, where are they meeting before the state capitol was built? Because the Tennessee state capitol, as we know it today, here in Nashville, that probably some of you have brought your students, to visit on a field trip, that wasn't built until 1849. So where were they meeting? So, through our research, we've been able to determine a couple of different places. We believe for sure that the 1834 Constitutional Convention was meeting in the Davidson County Courthouse. That would have been here in Nashville. Now, there's also some evidence that prior to the convention, they would have met at the Masonic Hall that was located here And then, of course, there was also, you know, meetings that would have taken place at places like Nashville Inn, which is where a lot of the movers and shakers in Nashville were kind of gathering. You all know how that goes. It's like the Hermitage Hotel, you know, around the passage of the 19th Amendment, the Women's Suffrage Amendment. Lots of folks are hanging out over there and talking about things. The Nashville Inn served that place in early Tennessee history as well. All right, let's move on. All right, so talking a little further about the 1870 Constitution, and if you're not from Tennessee, this gets a little bit complicated if you don't know the story. So, you know, of course, the Civil War comes to an end in 1865. The state of Tennessee, of course, was the first to be readmitted, the first succeeded Southern state to be readmitted to the Union. And they are readmitted as early as January of 1865. Before the war, well, they're not admitted. They start the process of attempting to be readmitted as early as January of 1865. There is a convention that is pulled together of about 500, mostly Unionists, who come to town to revise or to make an amendment to the Constitution to abolish slavery and then to reject the Secession Act that Tennessee passed, you know, to remove us from the Union in order to participate in the Civil War. So, you know, Tennessee does, you know, start this process very quickly, and they are readmitted to the Union. I believe it is January or July. It's a J state, y'all. They are readmitted by June of 1866, I think it is. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But so they are readmitted. But at the time, you know, of course, Reconstruction gets underway, and the radical Republicans that are, you know, in power at the federal level, and then also will, you know, ultimately become, you know, in power here in the state as well, have a very strict view of what should happen to the former Confederate states. So the radical Republicans are mandating that all former Confederate states need to rewrite their state constitution in order to join the Union. And that comes as part of the Reconstruction Acts that are passed a few years later. But, you know, the thing for Tennessee is that we are exempt from this process because we've already taken some of the steps that, you know, the country asked of states, and we're readmitted to the Union in 1866. But, you know, we do still have a constitutional convention in 1870. So even though Tennessee was readmitted to the Union before this requirement was mandated, Tennessee still gathers to rewrite a new constitution in 1870. Of course, this 1870 Constitution gives full emancipation to all men over the age of 21. It allows all men the right to vote regardless of their race. Although African Americans were given the right to vote, the 1870 Constitution does add the creation of a poll tax, okay? And this is just a tax that citizens had to pay at, you know, the ballot box in order to be able to vote. Of course, you know, not everyone is going to be able to afford to pay that. This mostly impacts the formerly enslaved and poor whites who could not afford to pay the tax and therefore remain disfranchised. The poll tax, I was looking that up just before this call. The poll tax, according to the Constitution, had to be no less than 50 cents and no more than $1. Each county could individually designate what the poll tax was, but certainly it had to be between that 50-cent and $1 rate. You know, so of course there are a lot of folks who are not going to be able to pay that and therefore remain disfranchised. By 1872, however, Sampson Keeble is the first African American who is elected to serve in this Tennessee legislature, and several others will be elected over the course of the Reconstruction period. All right, next slide. All right, again, just an image break. We've got, you know, a postcard essentially here on the left that shows you the new and current state capitol building of Tennessee that's located in Nashville, again, built in 1849. I'm sure some of you have taken your students, you know, there for a field trip. And then, of course, we've got an image of Sampson Keeble. A lot of the images that we see of him is his more formal portrait, but Lindsay was able to find this one from 1910 of Representative Keeble posing there with his sister's children. So we wanted to share that image with you all. All right, next slide. All right, so what we've done is created some curriculum products for you all to hopefully use in your classroom. And if you're familiar with our digital breakouts, I hope you all will be excited to know that we've had an 1834 digital breakout or a breakout for the 1834 Constitution that we've had for a couple of years now. We have also created one for 1796 and 1870. So digital breakouts are essentially just tools for educators that use primary and secondary sources to help students learn the concepts of specific Tennessee social studies curriculum standards. Each breakout will include background on the time period. So to place it in context, a little bit of what is happening kind of nationally in the country as Tennessee is starting this process of either writing a constitution or revising one in 1834 or 1870. Each breakout will include primary sources and transcriptions. We also have 5 to 7 multiple choice short answer questions that are included. We're trying to keep it quick, something that you can use in the classroom, you know, in a one class period, possibly after you've taught the Constitution before, like have the students participate in this digital breakout. Now, something for you all to know, because we have these available to you through our website, we're going to show you where you can find those. We've created them so that students must answer the questions correctly to complete the breakout. So if they get to the end of the breakout, you as the educator can know that the students have correctly answered all the questions. Now, it's frequently when we talk about our digital breakouts, we'll get this question from teachers like, what if I want to use this in my class as an assessment? And we certainly encourage that. We love that you all are interested in doing that. If you want to use it for an assessment, just reach out to us. You can reach out to Lindsay or myself and request that we send you a copy of the breakout. And that way you can add some questions to kind of force the students to enter their names or what class period they're in. And that way you can use it as an assessment. So let's go to the next slide, Lindsay. All right, so what we're going to do now is Casey is going to drop all 3 links to our digital breakouts into our chat. And I'm going to talk through them here in just a second. But just really quickly, what we want to ask you all to do is pick one that works with your curriculum that you're teaching and give it a try, you know, and then let us know what you think. Either unmute yourself and tell us what you think about it, or, you know, drop some comments into the chat. We've got the 1796, a couple of images from the 1796 breakout here. You can see that with the first image on the left, that's a little bit of that historical context we're talking about to set up like what's happening in the country as Tennessee starts to become a state. And then over on the right, we show a copy of the primary source, the actual state constitution from 1796. This is one of the later pages that addresses choosing a capital city. But we also have transcripts that are available. So students don't have to read this, you know, very elaborate, you know, historic handwriting. We definitely have typewritten transcripts that they can take a look at. Let's take a look at 1834 really quickly. Again, that one will also be very similar with a quick quick bit of history to place it in context. And then this one, we have students kind of taking a look at some census questions because that comes into play in 1834. And then 1870, we do the same. We've got, placing in a historical context. And then here's an example of the typewritten transcript that we're including that students will be able to take a look at to answer that question. So we're going to give you guys a few minutes just to take a look at those breakouts. And again, feel free to unmute yourself. I think we've got just under 20 people here on the call, so plenty of opportunity for you all to ask questions, make comments, suggestions. We are always interested in hearing your feedback. You all are the people that we create all of these things for, so definitely let us know what thoughts you have. And I'm going to sit quiet for a minute while you all work on those. Take a look at those. Hi, Maureen. I see your question there. Why did the delegates need to read the Northwest Ordinance? The Northwest Ordinance is the document that the United States does issue that guides how states will be admitted to the Union. There is no separate document for the Southwest Territory, so no. And it has to do, and Casey, feel free to jump in on, or Gina, feel free to jump in on this. It has to do with states being admitted as slave states or not. So yeah, it is the Northwest Ordinance that they are operating under.
Perfectly said, Kelly. Thank you.
And if anybody completes one, let us know. Like, drop that into the chat and let us know. Maureen, I see your question there. And if anybody else knows the answer to Maureen's question, please jump in, because I guess for I don't know that I can confidently answer that. I'll see if anybody else wants to jump in. I'm assuming the Northwest Ordinance just transfers, But that's a great question.
I'm seeing, according to the University of Pennsylvania's law school, it says the ordinance was reenacted after the adoption of the Constitution with just a couple of minor alterations.
Casey, grab that link for future. We'll take a look at that. It's a good question, Maureen. Does anybody have any comments or other questions for us? Would these work with your students? All right, Ashley, that's great. Amy, thank you for that feedback. No, that's a great, that's a great comment. Why wasn't it called that? All right, well, in the interest of time, we'll try to get back to the presentation so we can show you a little bit more about some of the resources that are available from the State Library and Archives and how to find these on our website through our activity bank. But definitely keep giving us some feedback. And if you guys have suggestions, too, I will also drop our email address into the chat. So if afterwards you all have any suggestions, feedback for us, anything that you run into that's problematic or that you wish were added to the breakout, definitely let us know. As I mentioned, we create these things for you. We want them to work for you and work in your classroom and for your students to learn more about the Constitution, and possibly want to come to the State Library and Archives one day and visit it. So, at this point, I'll turn things back over to Lindsay, and just definitely keep communicating with us in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Kelly, for sharing and presenting the information on our Tennessee State constitutions. I am going to go ahead and talk to you about some of the resources we have for our teachers and educators on our Education Forward page. So I am going to actually exit our PowerPoint and head to our website. So if you give me just a second. Okay, so our education webpage is tnsoshistory.com. And this is where you will find all the information that you would need as an educator that would be helpful for you and your classroom. And if you can notice the blue spot on the left side of your screen, it kind of gives you some information about what things we offer for educators, and you see a student tab and then parents and family. So I'm going to just focus on the educators tab for right now. So if you click on the educators tab, it will pull down some sub tabs for you to see. And as you can see, we have a lot of tabs that provide resources for you and in your students in your classroom. And I am going to go ahead and click on primary sources. And if you look at our primary sources for our education outreach program, we have pulled a lot of different primary sources that are divided into the eras of history that your typical textbook would define. And within those, you will find different sources that would help you supplement the materials that you're teaching. So under the growth of Republic, you can scroll down and you can see all the vocabulary words that we have seen in the standards that match with a primary source that we may have in our collection. And if you scroll down, you can see we have quite a few. I'm going to click on John Ross just so you can see some of the things that we have available. And as you can see, we have some pictures and some images And then we have some letters and different documents for you to show your kids. Now I am going to click on one of the letters that John Ross was corresponding with. And you can see here that this page, again, like the Constitution, it is all written in cursive. And I know as a former teacher in the classroom, a lot of kids cannot read cursive and they struggle with older versions of writing that they may not understand. During COVID, I know Tennessee State Library Archives staff took on a big project for our education outreach program, and that was transcribing a lot of these cursive written documents. And so if you scroll down under the document here, you can see a brief little, in our metadata, what it says. So it does say what the letter is in the transcription area. And then you can see a little bit of description. So some historical notes and background about why this correspondence is important. But if you want to see a PDF of the version, you just click on that transcription link and it will pull up the PDF as it's loading. And there you would have our the transcription of the document that was just shown for you. So that is something we did work hard for educators to have in their classroom, and it's a nice addition to our primary sources that we have. So I'm going to go back, and we do have transcriptions for and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, for all of our education primary sources that we have that are written in cursive. However, if you move to our main page, not all of the documents have been described. And not all of them do we feel are necessary to show students. They may show some images that, you may not want to show your students depending on their grade level at that time. So I'm going to go back to this educators tab, and then I'm going to show you our classroom resources that we have. We have been working hard the last couple years on a grant that we have from the National Archives and Publication Records. And one of those things is having teachers help us create in our workshops small activities that would go along with your standard. So this is an activity bank that we have, and you can see the buttons that we have. So we have 4th grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, and high school. And again, these are activities that go along with the Tennessee State curriculum standard. So I'm going to click the 5th grade here. And as you can see, we have a nice chart here that shows what we have available, whether it's short activities, a docs box, a full-blown lesson plan, a digital breakout, or just primary sources. And the primary sources is just another page where you can click, just like I showed you earlier on the Errors of History. But you can also go here and you can see child labor. So I'm going to click on the child labor short activity for you to see. And again, this is a teacher who created this activity, and we do try to keep these anonymous. So this was an attendee of our Summer Institute, and you can see here the title of this lesson, the small lesson plan, the standard that goes along with it, as well as the material that they would need. And then you can see the primary sources that we have linked up if you want to do the links, but we also made it super easy for you by scrolling down past the instructions. So we did give you the instructions for the activity as well. But we also gave you the graphic organizer that would go along with it, with the primary sources already put in there. And then we gave you the full-blown version, the full where you can see it and read it very carefully and with a closer eye. So you don't really have to go print anything besides this link if you didn't want to. So we try to make this super easy for all of you in the classroom. And here we have a document that we have not highlighted, but kind of emphasized that this is the material that you want students to focus on in that red rectangle there. So kids can read that portion without having to read the whole document in itself, because some of these documents do become very lengthy. And then I'm going to go to one other thing to show you, and that is our
Hey,
Yes.
Lindsay, before you navigate away from this page, can you just scroll on down and show them kind of where we linked up under the digital breakout? I think we've got all of them under the Tennessee history section. Just keep going down the page
Oh, right, here's the
there.
digital, this one
Yeah.
right here. Okay,
Oh.
so yes, talking about the digital breakouts that we have just made and the ones that we have made in the past, we do have some elementary breakouts that are K-5. So if you wanted to do a younger version, here's one on our state symbols. And if you click on these, they will talk to you about what they need to do in order to break out. So it's more audio related and picture than word analysis. And I do know some 5th grade teachers have said they would go with some of these more middle school and high school breakouts just because they feel like their students are ready for that. But if you go to our middle and high school breakouts, you can see that we have 6 available right now. And I know we will be adding our Constitution breakouts here soon for you to, the ones that you have just seen. And this one is on Alvin C. York, and I'm not going to go through it the way I usually do, just simply because you just did a breakout with us. But as you can see, we do have some primary sources linked, and what you would have to do in order to get through the breakout is answering the question correctly. If the student does not answer the question correctly, then it will give you a hint, and they would have to go back, look at the primary source more carefully, and then decide a different answer to hopefully be able to pass that question and go on to the next. Okay, and then let's see here. Go back to the educators, and I'm going to quickly go over the DocsBox page. So here are DocsBoxes. This is one of our most popular resources that we do have available for teachers. As you can see, we do reserve these DocsBoxes, and Gina, who is on this call or on this Zoom, is our DocsBox coordinator. We do have several of them that you can rent basically for free. What we do is we have FedEx. You would submit what box you wanted. We would have FedEx ship it to you in a big brown box, and inside that would be the crate and all the primary sources that are needed and to do these stationed activities. And then when you're done with it in your classroom, you just put it back in that box that it came in, send it to your front office with the label that is sent with you. And what will happen is that FedEx will go directly to your front office and pick it up from there. So you don't even have to travel to a FedEx to pick these up or to drop them off, which is a nice feature that we have because we know that your time is limited. So as you can see, as I've been scrolling, we have review boxes for 4th grade. We have 2 parts for 5th grade because we know that you have 2 sections that you need to be looking at. We have an 8th grade review box. We have all the way from Cotton to Vietnam. And I'm going to click really quick on World War I. And as you can see, you can in this picture, you can see all the stuff that comes with it. We have some artifacts, replicas that come with most of these boxes. And you can see what is included as you keep scrolling down and what are included in these. We are working to try to figure out a better way to get things to you besides a DVD, because we know those are pretty much obsolete at this point. So then what you would do to book this is you would go to a week you could find that is available. As you can see right now, our World War I box is pretty booked up. But if you find a date that you want, what we ask you to do is click where it says to submit a request. And what it will do is send you to a Google form. You would fill out your information, where it states, and then you would choose the dates that you think are best for you. Now, we don't always have your first choice available, so please give us 3 choices. And I know Gina has asked for you to give us a Monday date, because what teachers get this for 2 weeks, and it comes and it's there for a Monday until 2 weeks, which will end on a Friday. Please correct me if I'm wrong about that, Gina. But you would have that for 2 weeks and we would get it back. So if you could please just put those 3 dates that you would like, and hopefully they will be 3 different weeks, not just 3 different days in the same week. Because if it's not available on a Monday, it's not going to be available on a Wednesday either of that week. And then you submit it, and Gina will be in contact with you to hopefully get you one of your 3 choices that we have available. Okay, from there, I think this is all of our stuff that we have for resources that we're going to share with you. I do know that I am going to kind of share with you our Discover Tennessee history information. As Kira don't want to share it with y'all, I want to show you this slide. Here is the link that Kira had told you that we would be sharing with you. If you are interested, this is your first webinar with Discover Tennessee History, you can go in there and register. Our next one will be in January, and it will be presented by the Tennessee State Parks. And hopefully you can sign up. We have a few more this year that we have available for you. And it's also a nice way to learn about history from different organizations within our state. Okay, so we would love to hear your feedback today about our webinar. So if you could please click the link, and I think Casey will be giving you the link there in just a second, but we also have a QR code to give you as well, so we can hear see your survey information. And please be honest, we would love to hear what you thought about our session today, so we can improve it and make changes as needed. And if you want the QR code, I will go ahead and put that on the screen as well. So as we're waiting for you to fill out these surveys, I want to go ahead and see if we have any additional questions about the resources that we have with the Tennessee State Library and Archives, or anything about the constitutions that you may still be wondering or curious about.
And Lindsay, too, if you can go back 2 slides, it'll show them the next month's webinar.
Yeah.
Because hopefully everybody's grabbed the QR code by now.
Oops, I think I went back too far. There is the link to the next webinar that we have.
Yeah, it'll be state parks talking about what is a really amazing augmented and virtual reality program that they are getting started in state parks. We've seen a little bit of it, and I'm super excited that it's going to be available to teachers.
Again, we appreciate you attending our webinar for Discover Tennessee History. We are the Tennessee State Library and Archives. And with me, I had Kelly, who is our education coordinator. And we also had Gina and Casey manning the chats with us. And I think Janice is here as well. But if you have any questions about this, you can reach out to me or Kira. And you will be receiving a certificate for your professional development hour as soon as we are able to get those created and send them out to you.
Thank you all so much for coming and listening to us today.
Yes, thank you.